Our next topic, public safety tools for lithium-ion battery incidents. And this is one, luckily today, as we were discussing, I can definitely relate to what the realm, at least, is of the issue. And for this topic talk, we're going to ask Orly Amir to come join us on stage.
So I am the last topic talk. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining. As Dusty said, I'm Orly Amir, and I work as a division director at one of S&T's laboratories. It's called the National Urban Security Technology Lab, or NewSteel. We were just talking earlier about how people are serious about their abbreviations. NewSteel is like NEW-Steel. That's the correct way to say it. So as I said, NewSteel is one of the five DHS laboratories. We're located in New York City in Lower Manhattan, and our focus is on research, development, test, and evaluation in support of our nation's first responders. So we don't really support any of the DHS components, the traditional components. We support the nation's first responders at the mostly at the local, state, tribal, and territorial levels. So our laboratory conducts research and development, and we're looking at emerging threats and hazards. And then we're also looking at doing research on more complex hazards, which this is one of those, which require specialized planning or teams. And we do that in support, like I said, of law enforcement, the fire service, emergency medical services, and other first responders. We do test and evaluation of technologies, and we look at stuff that's commercially available or stuff that the government is developing, and we want to see if that technology can meet an operational mission or use case for those first responders. So today I'm going to talk about this new topic that we have. This is we're in the first full year of this topic as being a long-range BAA topic. And so I wanted to give a little bit of background about it. Yes? No? Maybe so. Is there a computer somewhere? Maybe the battery died. Well, I'll keep talking, and eventually you'll see the slide. Okay, so what we were talking about at the break, so lithium-ion batteries and the need for public safety tools and techniques to support the first responder community in preparing for responding to and recovering from these types of incidents. That's the topic. And I just wanted to give a little background about lithium-ion batteries if you're not totally sure. There it goes. Magic. If you're not totally sure about the hazard. So lithium-ion batteries are ubiquitous in our everyday lives. In my bag right there, I have 3 lithium-ion batteries. I have 2 cell phones, a government phone, my personal phone, and I have a laptop. You might have more. Hopefully no one has a vape pen, but those are lithium-ion batteries. So they're everywhere. And think about what's in your house. Think about everything that has a rechargeable battery. It's likely that almost all of those use lithium-ion or other similar chemistries. These lightweight batteries are great. That's why we use them. They have high energy density, and they're really just very commonplace in everyday lives, from power tools and toys, personal and household electronics, home appliances, electric bikes and scooters, and so many more items. And increasingly, they're also being used as energy storage systems for residential to commercial of various sizes and capacities. So our concern is when these batteries become damaged or they're misused or mischarged. And it can be physical, thermal, or electrical damage. The battery can enter into something called a chemical reaction that's known as thermal runaway, which can very quickly lead to explosions and fires. A thermal runaway reaction does not require outside oxygen to fuel itself, which challenges traditional firefighting approaches and firefighting techniques. Additionally, these fires release toxic gases, we call them off gases, and they have not been fully characterized yet. Additionally, these fires, they can have flaming, and so the cells, a fire in one cell can quickly expand beyond its original cell or pack to really everything that's surrounding it. And then just to add on to the fun of these challenges, a damaged battery, so a battery that's caught on fire and has been put out, it's possible that that battery still retains energy called stranded energy. So this lingering energy can potentially reignite hours to days or even weeks after a fire is extinguished. So these compounding challenges are really of big concern to our nation's first responders. So at the moment, the best solution firefighters have to fight these fires, to contain, suppress, and extinguish, is using water. But because that chemical reaction of thermal runaway is self-fulfilling, the water is really serving as a cooling mechanism for the battery, and it doesn't actually end that thermal runaway reaction. Additionally, many of these batteries, like if you have an electric vehicle, think about how well that was built. They're built to sustain water, right? They're not built to take in water. And thus it makes it very difficult for firefighters to apply water in the exact place it needs to be to actually put out the fire. And so this has caused some departments to, in turn use copious amounts of water to cool these batteries. And as we know, like water is not prevalent in every community, right? The water is a scarce resource in some places. So unfortunately, at this time, we have constraints in our current fire reporting system. So there's no nationwide data that really tells us just how significant this hazard is, which is something that others in the government are working on, but that's where we're at today. But in local jurisdictions, data is being collected, and the local data is telling a story of a significant increase in these types of incidents, and really truly impacts to civilians and to the populations that these first responders support. So like I said, I live and work in New York. In New York, there were no recorded deaths from lithium-ion batteries in 2020, but 3 years later in 2023, so last year, the deaths attributed to lithium-ion batteries was 18 and 150 injuries, and that was across 268 total fires that involved lithium-ion batteries. And in 2024, the Fire Department of New York, FDNY, came out and said that these types of fires have become the leading cause of both fire and fire deaths in New York City. So that's kind of a big deal. And then another data point across the country in San Diego, I saw that they reported 104 fires in 2023 from these types of batteries, which was up from 6 in 2020. I'm not a mathematician. I think that's like a 16 times increase in 3 years. So that's pretty significant. So now that I kind of explained what the hazard is and how it's growing, I wanted to highlight a few fires that I've learned about locally and kind of like in the national news, because I think it helps provide context of like what our problem is and what the gaps that we're trying to solve are. These are different types of fires. They highlight kind of a length of response time, the cascading challenges that the fire departments are experiencing, and the types of responses that are kind of being deployed. And so just in disclosure to myself, this isn't comprehensive, or is it representative? And the thing that I just want to be clear of is like, I'm not here saying that, every battery or energy storage system is unsafe. That is not true. And that's not really the point. I think the point that we're trying to highlight with this topic and this emerging threat area is that, when something bad does happen, can we make sure that the first responders who we think are coming to help us have the right tools, equipment, and knowledge to be able to respond quickly and effectively and actually save lives and protect property? So a couple of fires that are, I think, kind of illustrate, where we're going and what this problem is. In April 2019 in Surprise, Arizona, there were 4 firefighters that were severely injured when they responded to an incident at an energy storage facility where an explosion occurred. Or I think it was a deflagration occurred. And this is one of the first incidents of this nature that kind of brought this topic out into the forefront from my perspective to the first responder community, and highlighted, this is a potential safety issue for first responders. In April 2023, this one's pretty sad. 2 children died in their home in New York City when an e-bike that was being charged near their front door to their apartment building caught on fire. I think that they were on the 2nd floor. The fire quickly traveled up the stairwell and overtook an apartment. And the article that I saw said that FDNY reported being on scene within 3 minutes. It's very fast in New York City, 3 minutes, and they weren't able to save everyone's lives. In May of this year in Otay Mesa, California, there was a large fire at an energy storage facility. It took, I think, a couple of weeks to put out. I think about 2 weeks to put out because the initial fire kept being reignited. And so if you think about an incident like that, think about how many fire resources, how many personnel and apparatus are on scene if that's the type of response that they're responding to. And then just one last example, you may have saw this in the news just very recently. I think it was last month, or maybe it was in June. A tractor trailer carrying lithium-ion batteries was involved in some sort of crash. I'm not sure exactly the nature of the crash on I-15 near Baker, California, which is the big thoroughfare between California and Vegas. And the response shut down the highway for over 48 hours, I believe. And it left motorists stranded in very high temperatures. And there were concerns about air quality. I think that the container that was involved in the incident was, from what I read in the news, that's where I'm getting my information, was like 75,000 pounds. Yeah, 75,000 pounds. So pretty significant. So I just bring these up to highlight, this is like an evolving hazard. This is an evolving response for first responders. And it highlights for us the need to do more research and to have innovative ideas from industry, entrepreneurs, folks like yourselves, to help us solve this problem and to help us get the tools and techniques into the hands of first responders. In February 2024, there was a hearing on it was the House Representatives Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Emergency Management. And the hearing brought together a bunch of subject matter experts. One of those experts was Dr. Lori Moore Merrill. She's the fire administrator from the U.S. Fire Administration, which is part of FEMA. And she just discussed a lot of the things I've just talked about today, the increased fire risk when these systems get damaged. And she really highlighted some of the changes to firefighting tactics. And she left with really a call to action, a call for more research to better characterize these types of fires to ensure we can provide our first responders with information to update their procedures and tactics. And so that call to action is what we're trying to achieve with this long-range BAA topic. Broadly, we believe that first responders need improved tools, strategies, guidance, training, handling, techniques, and other related technologies to support them in responding to these types of battery fires. So I'll just go through the bottom bullets a little bit more in detail. So give a flavor for sort of like what these kind of subtopics are. So the first one, improving knowledge base. As I mentioned, there's limited data on these types of fires because of our reporting system right now. So it's really difficult to fully characterize all the associated risks with these types of incidents. And there's also a lot of unknowns about like the fire behavior and what's happening with the fire to support advancements of tactics and response strategies. So I think that if we improve baseline knowledge for first responders on the scope and the scale of what we can expect from these types of fires, we would significantly support the response. Early recognition is really important. One thing that we do know from these fires, specifically in those smaller electronics and the micromobility devices like the e-bikes and the e-scooters, is that these fires advance very, very quickly. Flashover rates now, regardless if the fire started from a lithium-ion battery or not, are really short, right? Like I just said, FDNY was on scene in 3 minutes and couldn't save lives. And so it really leaves the public little time to get to safety, and it leaves first responders less time, even less time to make rescues, save lives, and protect property. So advanced warning would improve these outcomes, right? If we could recognize earlier that a battery is failing, about to fail, about to, enter into this catastrophic, action, then we could maybe improve the techniques and tactics that firefighters bring to the table. So I think innovative ideas to advance that timeline, basically giving responders more time, giving the public more time for recognition that a situation is about to be dangerous is really important to us. Next up, techniques and tools. So as of right now, water is the most common option that's being used to suppress and extinguish these fires. But we seek innovative ideas for novel technologies that work as well as water, right? Is there something better than water, more effective than water that can really help first responders? Water is becoming scarcer and scarcer. And so in communities that are in, desert environments where water is not easily accessible, are there novel and innovative suppression solutions that could really advance that response? I talked about off gases. So the health and safety of first responders and the public is obviously very important. These responses are being handled out of hazmat. So they're being treated as hazmat incidents or hazardous materials incidents. And so, there is a good base of knowledge, but there's always more research that can be done about what's coming off these batteries and when the hazard is at the highest. So, if you think about there's been an incident, there's, firefighters showing up, are the hazards at their highest when the firefighters are showing up? Have the hazards kind of already passed because, the incident has already a couple minutes in? So kind of characterizing what's coming off these fires, what these off gases are, and what that means for responders and the public who are nearby. Hazmat is deploying air monitoring capabilities to characterize these incidents. So additional information on sort of that type of knowledge, I think, would be really important. And then also understanding contamination on gear and other personal protective equipment is always of interest to the fire service. I talked about stranded energy. That's the energy that's left in a battery after it's been damaged and it's gone through some sort of reaction. Stranded energy is pretty dangerous because you just don't know when it's going to reignite. And this can happen if the battery is damaged or the battery management system is damaged. So it makes it really difficult to transport the battery, pack the battery, and prep it for recycling. So we call for tools to quickly identify if any charge remains, or tools to characterize the fire to see how much energy is left, would benefit first responders. Right now, first responders kind of take this burden of these batteries when they're in these unknown states, and any additional information we can provide them, I think, would significantly improve their ability to respond and protect us all. And then the last one is packing. Second to last one is packing. This goes right along with stranded energy. Removing the stranded energy is really important, and then knowing the remaining state of charge. And if there's any new methods or innovative ideas for sort of removing that charge, de-energizing the battery, I think would be another solution area. And then last but not least, I know I've been on this slide for a while, we're looking ahead, right? So we want to be sure we can help responders and communities prepare for the larger energy storage systems that are coming, whether they be in large commercial spaces and high rises or other dense areas. So guidance, tools, strategies for preparing for and planning for the scope of the hazards that may come with these larger installations, and then providing guidance, training, handling for understanding those impacts will be really crucial. Okay. So as the federal government makes historic investments in clean energy, as we know, Department of Energy is doing a lot of investment in clean energy research and demonstration. We here at DHS S&T believe that public safety agencies really need, clear guidance based on research and testing to prevent and respond to these fires, saving lives and protecting property. Lithium-ion battery fires continue to result in deaths and financial losses, demonstrating that the public safety community is not yet equipped with the right knowledge or all the knowledge and the tools that they need to safeguard our communities from this growing hazard, and then future hazards of energy storage. So our goal here with this long-range BAA is to really, get innovative ideas, get entrepreneurs to think about this problem, and help us ensure we can provide scientifically validated, tested solutions, science and guidance to help those first responders prepare and respond. And then, what it comes down to is like saving lives, right? It's my family's house they're going to, it's your family's house they're going to. You want to make sure they have those tools and those techniques to do what they need to do and what we expect and hope them to do. And like I said, the health and safety risks are super important. What are these risks? How do we plan for and mitigate them now? And then how do we help communities prepare for this expansion of energy storage? And then the last slide I have is the resource slide. So as I said at the start, this is a really new topic. We just put it up, I think maybe December was when we added it. So we haven't been around for very long, and this is like a new program area for DHS S&T. And so we're just getting started. We're even just kind of still defining the problem and seeing what's out there. There's a lot of work being done in the interagency. That's really awesome, and we're trying to build on that. But I did link to a basic fact sheet that we have on our program, and I also linked to some USFA guidance that they have. It's mostly for helping first responders understand this hazard, but I think it's really interesting. And I've talked a lot about first responders, and I was prepping during Anna's presentation when Dusty asked about other customers. So right now we're focused on first responders, but this is for everybody, right? This is federal, right? As we see fleets becoming updated to electric vehicles, as we see maritime vessels transitioning to moving away from fossil fuels, these batteries are going to be in our lives and they're going to impact all of us. And so I think that this is a cross-component, cross-government, cross lines on all accounts problem that we're just trying to get our hands around now, and really build the tools to help prepare for this energy future that's coming, I think. So with that, Do you have a question for me?
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
And for being last,
Yeah.
wrapping us up. All right. So at this point, we're going to be doing our 10-minute break.